The Army Reserve Center in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, buzzed with the controlled chaos of annual training week. 200 reservists had gathered for their mandatory 2-week active duty period, a mix of weekend warriors, prior service members maintaining their obligations, and the occasional new recruit still finding their footing in military culture. In the company office, Staff Sergeant Brooks Keller stood before Captain Mateo Ruiz's desk, a medical waiver form in his hand. Outside, the South Carolina August heat was already pushing 90 degrees at 7 in the morning, promising another brutal day of physical training, weapons qualification, and tactical exercises. "Sir, I'm requesting exemption from the running portions of PT," Brooks said quietly. Mateo looked up from his computer, eyebrows rising. "Exemption? On what grounds?" "Old injury, sir. Left knee. Running aggravates it." "You passed your last APFT." Mateo pulled up Brooks's file on his screen. 6 months ago, you scored 285. That's excellent. Now you're saying you can't run? "The injury's gotten worse, sir." "Do you have documentation, medical records, physical therapy notes?" Brooks hesitated. "No, sir. It's an old injury, predates my current enlistment." "Then you need to see the battalion medical officer and get it documented. Until then, you're expected to participate in all PT activities like everyone else." "Sir, I'd really prefer to avoid." "Sergeant Keller." Mateo's voice hardened. "I've got 200 soldiers to manage and limited time to do it. You want a profile, you get medical documentation. Otherwise, you fall in with everyone else at 05:30 tomorrow. Dismissed." Brooks stood at attention, jaw tight. "Yes, sir." He left the office, the door closing behind him with controlled force that wasn't quite a slam. In the hallway, several soldiers had overheard the exchange. Word traveled fast in military units, especially reserve units where everyone knew everyone's business. By lunchtime, the rumors had spread. "Keller's trying to get out of PT," Private Gavin Hutchins announced in the chow hall, loud enough to carry. "Says he's got a bad knee." "Bad knee?" Specialist Everly Chen laughed. "Dude's 34 years old, probably just out of shape and doesn't want to embarrass himself." "He scored 285 6 months ago," someone pointed out. "Yeah, and I bet that was bullshit. Probably had someone else run for him or something." Brooks sat 3 tables away, eating methodically, his face expressionless. He heard every word, but said nothing. Just kept eating his overcooked chicken and reconstituted mashed potatoes, like the conversation didn't concern him. "You think he's faking?" Gavin asked his table mates. "Definitely. Guys like that, they get older, can't keep up anymore. Suddenly they've got injuries that conveniently show up right before annual training." "I don't know," Private Naomi Garcia said carefully. "He seems pretty serious about it, like actually hurt or actually lazy." Everly stood, dumping her tray. "Either way, Captain Ruiz isn't having it. He'll be running with us tomorrow, bad knee or not." 5:30 came early, the way it always did in the military. The company formed up in the darkness before dawn, 200 soldiers in PT uniforms, black shorts, grey army t-shirts, running shoes. The air was already thick with humidity that promised another scorcher. First Sergeant Lydia Monroe stood before the formation, her voice cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. "Today's PT consists of a 4-mile run followed by calisthenics. We'll move in formation at 8-minute mile pace. Anyone who falls out will be required to complete the distance on their own time. Clear?" "Clear, First Sergeant. Fall out by platoons." Brooks stood in 2nd Platoon, 3rd Squad. The soldiers around him were already whispering. "Bet he falls out in the 1st mile," someone muttered. "Bet he doesn't even start." But when the formation moved out, Brooks moved with them. His stride was measured, controlled, but there was something off about his gait, a slight hitch in his left leg, almost imperceptible unless you were watching for it. The 1st mile passed. Brooks kept pace, though his face had gone pale, jaw clenched so tight the muscles jumped. Second mile, the hitch became more pronounced. His left leg seemed to drag slightly every few steps, like the knee wasn't quite bending correctly. "He's gonna fall out," Gavin panted to the soldier beside him. "Look at him. He's dying." But Brooks didn't fall out. He kept running, even as sweat poured down his face that had nothing to do with exertion and everything to do with pain. His breathing was controlled, steady, like someone using technique to override physical distress. Third mile. His left leg buckled slightly, just for a second. He caught himself, adjusted, kept going. Several soldiers had fallen out by now, genuinely tired, not injured. But Brooks remained in formation. "Stubborn bastard," Everly said, something almost like respect in her voice. Fourth mile. The finish line appeared, the company area parking lot where they'd started. The formation slowed to a walk, soldiers gasping, hands on knees, some doubled over. Brooks crossed the line, then immediately collapsed, not dramatically. Just a controlled fall to his knees, then onto his side, his left leg extended straight like bending it was impossible. His face had gone grey, lips pressed together to hold back what might have been a scream. First, Sergeant Munro was there in seconds. "Keller, you all right?" "Fine, First Sergeant." His voice was strained. "Just need a minute." "Your knee?" "Yes, First Sergeant." "Why the hell did you run on a bad knee?" "Because I was ordered to participate in all PT activities, First Sergeant." Munro's expression shifted from concern to anger. "Medic, get over here." The battalion medic, a specialist named Quinn Taylor, dropped beside Brooks, hands immediately checking the knee. "Can you bend it?" "Not right now." "Swelling?" "Probably." Quinn pulled up Brooks's PT shorts, exposing his left knee. The joint was indeed swollen, already showing the kind of inflammation that came from serious damage being aggravated. But it wasn't the swelling that made Quinn pause. It was the scars. The knee was a roadmap of surgical scars, multiple incisions, some old and faded, some more recent. The kind of scarring that came from complex reconstructive surgery, not a simple meniscus repair. "Jesus," Quinn breathed. "What happened to your knee?" "Old injury." "This isn't old. Some of these scars are maybe 2 years old. What kind of surgery did you have?" "The kind that put it back together after it was destroyed." Munro crouched down. "Keller, why didn't you get medical documentation?" "Because the injury isn't documented anywhere the Army can access, First Sergeant." "What does that mean?" Brooks met her eyes. "It means exactly what it sounds like, First Sergeant." An hour later, Brooks sat in the aid station, ice pack on his knee, while Captain Ruiz and First Sergeant Munro stood over him with expressions that mixed anger and confusion. "Explain," Ruiz said flatly. "I requested exemption from running. You denied it. I followed orders and ran anyway. Now my knee is fucked. Again." Brooks's voice was calm, factual. "What's there to explain, sir?" "The part where you have obvious major surgical scarring but no medical documentation. The part where you could have prevented this by going to sick call. The part where you're acting like this is somehow my fault. It's not your fault, sir, it's mine. I should have pushed harder for the exemption. You should have gotten documentation. I can't." "Why not?" Brooks was quiet for a long moment. "Because the injury occurred during activities that aren't officially documented, sir." The aid station went very still. "What kind of activities?" Munro asked carefully. "The kind I can't discuss, First Sergeant." Ruiz and Munro exchanged glances. There were only a few reasons a soldier couldn't discuss how they'd been injured, and all of them involved classifications above what a reserve company commander typically dealt with. "Were you active duty before joining the reserves?" Ruiz asked. "Yes, sir. 8 years active, 75th Ranger Regiment. Got out in 2021, joined the reserves in 2022. "Rangers?" Ruiz's tone shifted slightly. "But Ranger activities are documented. You'd have medical records." "Not if I wasn't officially with the Rangers when I got hurt, sir." The implication hung in the air. Special operations units borrowed personnel all the time for missions that didn't officially exist. Injuries sustained on those missions fell into grey areas, acknowledged privately but not documented publicly. "So, you're telling me," Monroe said slowly, "that you got your knee destroyed doing something you can't talk about, and now you're stuck in limbo because you can't prove the injury exists?" "That's one way to put it, First Sergeant. And rather than explain this to Captain Ruiz, you just tried to run on it." "I followed orders, First Sergeant. That's what soldiers do." Ruiz rubbed his face. "This is above my pay grade. I'm calling the battalion commander." Colonel Tristan Hayes arrived at the aid station 30 minutes later. At 52, he commanded the reserve battalion with the kind of efficiency that came from 30 years of active service before transitioning to the reserves. His uniform was crisp despite the heat, his bearing that of someone who'd spent decades making hard decisions and living with them. "Captain Ruiz, report." "Sir, Staff Sergeant Keller requested PT exemption for a knee injury but couldn't provide documentation. I denied the request. He ran anyway and significantly aggravated the injury. Now he's claiming the injury occurred during classified activities he can't discuss." Hayes turned to Brooks. "Keller, sir, stand up." Brooks levered himself up carefully, favoring his right leg. Standing at attention was clearly painful, but he did it anyway, spine straight, eyes forward. Hayes walked around him slowly, assessing. "You were 75th Ranger Regiment." "Yes, sir. 2nd Battalion Alpha Company, 2013 to 2021. "Combat deployments?" "6, sir. Afghanistan twice, Iraq 3 times, 1 to Syria." "And this injury?" "Can't discuss it, sir. Can't or won't." "Both, sir." Hayes stopped in front of him. "Take off your shirt." Brooks hesitated. "Sir?" "That's an order, Staff Sergeant." Slowly, Brooks pulled off his grey PT shirt. His torso was lean, muscular in the way that came from functional strength rather than gym work, but it was also marked, scars, several of them. A puckered circular scar on his left shoulder that looked suspiciously like a bullet wound. A long surgical scar across his ribs, and on his right side, just above his hip, a tattoo, a black snake coiled around a dagger, no text, no unit designation. Just the image, rendered in dark ink with remarkable detail, the scales on the snake, the blood drop on the dagger's tip. Colonel Hayes went very still. The aid station, which had been quietly bustling with medics and other soldiers, fell silent. Everyone was watching now, sensing something significant was happening without understanding what. Hayes stepped closer, examining the tattoo. His face had gone pale, color draining like someone had opened a valve. "Where did you get this?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "Private tattoo artist, sir, before joining the reserves." "Bullshit!" Hayes's eyes snapped up to Brooks's face. "I know what this is. I've only seen it twice before, and both times it was on operators who officially don't exist." Brooks said nothing. "Task Force Serpent," Hayes continued, his voice low enough that only those immediately nearby could hear. "Joint Special Operations Command, compartmented program, ran from 2017 to 2022. Direct action missions in denied areas, the kind of work where if you die, your family gets told you were killed in a training accident." Still nothing. "You weren't officially with Rangers when you got hurt," Hayes said. "You were on loan to Serpent, and whatever happened destroyed your knee so badly it required multiple reconstructive surgeries that can't be documented because the mission that caused them doesn't officially exist." Brooks's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. Hayes turned to the room. "Everyone out, now." The medics and soldiers cleared the aid station in seconds, leaving only Hayes, Ruiz, Monroe, and Brooks. "At ease," Hayes said quietly. Brooks relaxed slightly, though pain still etched his face. "How many missions?" Hayes asked. "Sir, I'm not asking for operational details. I'm asking how many times you deployed with Serpent." Brooks was quiet for a moment. 14 missions over 3 years, sir." "And the knee?" "Yemen, 2020. Building collapsed during extraction, caught my leg between concrete slabs, took them 6 hours to dig me out. By then the knee was crushed, patella shattered, MCL and ACL torn, meniscus destroyed, nerve damage. They rebuilt it, but it's never been the same. Why didn't you medically retire? Because I wanted to keep serving, sir. Medical retirement would have meant paperwork, documentation, questions I couldn't answer. So I did the surgeries through special channels, did the rehab, scored high enough on my PT test to stay in, and when my active duty time was up, I transitioned to reserves where the physical demands are lower. Hayes shook his head. Except the reserves still require PT, and captains who don't know your history still expect you to run. Yes, sir. Can you run at all? On a good day. With a brace, I can manage 2 miles at a slow pace. Today wasn't a good day, and I didn't have my brace. But I was ordered to participate, so I did. You could have told Captain Ruiz the truth. With respect, sir, I couldn't. The program's classified. I signed documents that prohibit me from discussing it with anyone who doesn't have proper clearance. Captain Ruiz doesn't have that clearance. Hayes turned to Ruiz. He's right. And now I'm in the position of knowing something I shouldn't be able to officially acknowledge. He looked back at Brooks. Put your shirt on, Sergeant. Brooks complied, wincing as the movement jarred his knee. Here's what's going to happen, Hayes said. I'm going to make some calls, discreet ones, to people who might remember a ranger on loan to a program that officially doesn't exist, who got hurt in a place we officially weren't operating. With luck, I can get you medical documentation that doesn't violate classification but gives you the profile you need. Sir, I don't want special treatment. You're not getting special treatment. You're getting what you should have had 3 years ago. Official recognition of an injury sustained in service to your country. Hayes's voice hardened. The fact that the injury happened during a mission so classified that acknowledging it could compromise national security doesn't change the fact that you destroyed your knee serving this nation. You deserve proper medical care and accommodation. Classification be damned. Brooks' throat worked. Thank you, sir. By evening, word had spread through the unit. Not the details. Those remained classified, and Hayes had made it clear that anyone discussing Brooks's tattoo or its meaning would face serious consequences. But the broad strokes were enough. Staff Sergeant Keller had sustained a serious combat injury during classified operations, had been unable to get proper documentation, and was now receiving the support he should have had all along. The soldiers who'd mocked him that morning found Brooks in the barracks common area, sitting with his leg elevated, ice pack secured with an ace bandage. Gavin approached first, his earlier swagger gone. Sergeant Keller, I owe you an apology. For what? For calling you lazy, for assuming you were faking, for, he gestured helplessly, for being an asshole. You didn't know. I should have given you the benefit of the doubt. Brooks shrugged. Most people assume the worst. It's human nature. Everly joined them, her expression somber. I said some things in the chow hall, things I shouldn't have said. I heard. And you didn't defend yourself. What would I have said? Actually, I destroyed my knee on a mission I can't tell you about. That would have gone over well. You could have said something, anything. I could have. Brooks adjusted the ice pack. But here's the thing. In special operations, you learn that actions matter more than words. Talk is cheap. Results aren't. So when people doubt you, you don't argue. You just do the job and let the results speak for themselves. But you collapsed, Gavin said. You ran 4 miles on a destroyed knee and collapsed. That's not letting results speak. That's torture. It was following orders. There's a difference. Naomi, who'd been quiet, spoke up. Why didn't you just refuse? Tell Captain Ruiz you couldn't do it. Because soldiers don't refuse lawful orders. Ruiz ordered me to participate in PT. That's a lawful order. My injury doesn't change the order's legality. It just makes following it more painful. That's insane. That's the military. Brooks' smile was tired. You follow orders even when they suck, especially when they suck, because the alternative is chaos. Colonel Hayes appeared in the doorway. Keller, walk with me. Brooks levered himself up, grabbed his crutches, the medic had insisted, and followed Hayes outside. They walked slowly toward the company area, the evening air finally cooling to something bearable. I made those calls, Hayes said. Talked to some people who remember a ranger getting hurt in Yemen. Can't give details, but they're willing to generate documentation that shows you sustained significant combat injuries, requiring multiple surgeries. No operational details, just medical facts. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. The documentation will take a few weeks. Until then, you're on a temporary profile. No running, limited physical activity. And Keller, sir? After this training period ends, I want you to consider transitioning to a staff position. Operations, intelligence, training. Somewhere your experience matters, but your knee doesn't. Brooks stopped walking. Sir, I'm not ready to be behind a desk. You're 34 years old, with a knee held together by surgical steel and prayers. How much longer can you keep pretending you're still a 25-year-old ranger? As long as necessary, sir. Hayes sighed. I knew guys like you when I was active duty. Operators who couldn't let go, who kept pushing until their bodies literally fell apart. You know what happened to most of them? They found other ways to serve. They destroyed themselves. Hayes's voice was gentle now. And the tragedy is, they had so much knowledge, so much experience that could have been passed on to the next generation. But they were so focused on being operators that they couldn't see the value in being instructors, mentors, leaders. Brooks stared at the darkening sky. The thing about special operations, sir, is that it gives you a purpose, a mission. Take that away, and what's left? A man who survived what most people can't even imagine. A man who has skills and knowledge that could train the next generation of operators. A man who's earned the right to stop destroying himself and start building something else. I don't know how to be anything else. Then learn. You learned how to be a ranger. You learned how to operate in the shadows. You can learn how to be whatever comes next. Hayes put his hand on Brooks's shoulder, carefully avoiding the scarred area. That tattoo on your side, the snake and dagger. You know what it means? Of course, sir. Tell me anyway. The snake represents stealth, adaptability, patience. The dagger represents precision, lethality, purpose. Together, they're the philosophy of the task force. Strike from the shadows with deadly accuracy. And what happens when a snake sheds its skin? Brooks looked at him. It grows. Exactly. It doesn't stop being a snake. It just becomes a bigger, stronger version of itself. Hayes smiled slightly. Maybe it's time for you to shed a skin, Keller. Stop being the operator who can't run anymore and become something else. Something that still serves but doesn't require you to destroy what's left of your knee. They stood in the gathering darkness, the sounds of the base settling in for the night, distant voices, vehicles, the hum of generators. I'll think about it, sir, Brooks said finally. Good. Because whether you like it or not, your days of running 4 miles on a destroyed knee are over. The question is, what comes next? 3 weeks later, Brooks received his medical documentation, official recognition of combat injuries sustained in Southwest Asia, requiring permanent physical profile limiting running and high-impact activities. No operational details, no classified information, just medical facts that finally gave him the accommodation he'd needed for 3 years. 2 months after that, he accepted a position as a training NCO for the Reserve Battalion, teaching small unit tactics and mentoring younger soldiers. His knee still hurt, probably always would, but he was serving, contributing, passing on knowledge that could keep the next generation alive. The tattoo remained on his side, a permanent reminder of a time when he'd operated in shadows, carrying out missions that officially never happened. But the shadows weren't all he was anymore. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in refusing to change. It's in recognizing when change is necessary, shedding the skin that no longer fits, and growing into something new while carrying forward the essence of what you were. The snake adapts, the dagger strikes true, and the operator who can't run anymore finds other ways to serve. That's not weakness, that's evolution.